After the Fall is a multiplayer zombie shooter that you can play on a VR device. I played it on the PICO 4, and they did provide me with a PICO 4 unit as well as this game so that I could review it for you, so thank you for that. What I'm going to do is just walk through what I thought about the gameplay, the graphics, the controls, the sound, just how good is this game. I am going to show you some gameplay here. I actually was able to use the screencasting that you can do on the PICO. You can see there at the top. I screencasted this to a browser so that I could record it, so you could see exactly what the gameplay looked like. So just to walk you through sort of the basics of gameplay, you start out in sort of a room like this, and you can like buy these upgrades. Now, obviously, if you start, you don't have any of the money, you don't really, you're not able to do that. So I wasn't able to buy anything, which you don't really need that in the beginning. And then you kind of smack this little button here, and you go out. As you're progressing through, zombies kind of pour out. Sometimes there's an objective, sometimes there's not, and you and 3 other people are working together. Now, I didn't play online, so it just auto-filled AI for me, and the AI actually did, I thought, a very good job. They saved me a handful of times. I saved them a handful of times. It does get pretty intense. So let me just talk about the gameplay flow. Basically, as you're moving through, the zombies are dropping points, and then you use those points in those safe rooms, and those safe rooms enable you to like buy some of those upgrades. Now, if you ever see it like skipping or like there's pieces missing, that was probably just some latency in the webcast. It doesn't do that in the game. I didn't have any issues with performance. I didn't have any issues with hitching or snags or anything weird like that. Now, you'll notice here, I do the manual reload. You get your better ammo economy when you do that. There's a more simpler reload if you prefer it, to not have to constantly kind of like reach down, grab a clip, and slam it up in. And most of the gameplay pretty much plays out like this. You and a group are kind of moving through, and the zombies kind of come out, and then you collect ammo. There's different weapons to find throughout. That's always really nice. You get to a point where you can actually have 2 pistols. I'll kind of advance some of the footage here as we get a little bit further on so that you can see what it looks like when I have the 2 pistols. And the 2 pistols does make it a little bit more awkward to reload because you're dropping 2 mags, and you do the same hand motions to reload, so it actually works quite well. It's just a little awkward at first. I actually rather enjoyed it. So I think the gameplay is really, really fun, actually. At first I thought, I don't know if I'm going to like this, another zombie shooter, but it really is a good time. I think this would be a blast with some of your friends. Obviously, I'm playing with AI teammates, so there were a couple of times we probably could have had better synergy. I even went down at the end after they all went down. The very final boss was pretty tough. Sadly, I went down because I bumped a button on my controller and it pulled up the PICO menu, and I didn't know what I did. I was like, I don't know what this is. I couldn't get it out of it fast enough to fix and get back to the action. So you'll find things like pipe bombs and different things all throughout the gameplay to kind of spice up the combat a little bit. I don't know if there's ways to take more things with you, maybe have a little bit more inventory. Maybe that's something you upgrade as you go. So I was just sort of holstering 2 guns and then making sure I had 2 different guns. You'll notice on the numbers there's 4 different colors of ammunition, so that makes it really easy to know what you're using. Even attached to the weapons, those little digital readouts for your ammo, they'll be in the color of the ammo. So I always made it a point to have a blue ammo weapon and a green ammo weapon, and I was throwing these pipe bombs down to kind of prepare for the next area. Now, graphically, I will say this is not really a very strong game with respect to graphics. There are obviously other VR games that maybe shoot for a little bit more of the photorealism. I think that's okay. I don't think a game like this needs to have super high-level graphics, mainly because you're just playing with your buds and shooting zombies. And I really think games like this are kind of having a comeback, because just getting back to the basics of gaming where you're just having a good time and, just moving through and doing kind of that multiplayer thing. Now, I will talk about the controls. I think the controls are very intuitive. I've skipped ahead a little bit here. I think the controls are very intuitive and they work quite well. I will say the reloading could probably afford to get a bit of an update. There were numerous times in the final fight where I did the reload motion multiple times and just couldn't get it to work. There were times where I was literally putting the clip, and you'll watch, it'll just be like hitting the gun or going into the gun, but not registering the actual reload mechanic. So there's just a couple of things there that I think they could probably afford to polish, mainly because in a game like this, you don't have a lot of room. You know, you're doing a lot of backpedaling. You're doing a lot of running away, which I recommend doing that in this. Like, just make space, and you'll find that your survivability goes up. Don't just stand there and dig in. It's good to sometimes like run past the zombies and turn around. But those control hangups, I think a couple of times really did lead to unnecessary pain and frustration. It was like, I'm just trying to reload my weapon. Now, you might want to not do that, then just put it on the more easy reload, and then that should make things quite a bit better for you. Outside of that, I found the controls to be very intuitive, very responsive. Only a couple of times, like, you try to open something and it doesn't quite work right. Sometimes I think that's because I prefer sitting whenever I play a VR game, and you can tell the VR game, hey, I'm sitting, you know, I'm not standing, and it should be able to adjust. But a lot of the times when you're standing, things like that just go better. If you have way more space around you, some of my quibbles about, you know, opening a suitcase and stuff might not be that necessary. When it comes to sound, I actually thought they did a very good job with sound. There were numerous times I'd be sort of moving through corridors and cramped spaces, and I could sort of hear the zombies, and that really added, I think, to the setting and sort of the ambiance. So here's an environment where we kept having to lower this sort of train car thing, and then the zombies would come, and I found this to be one of the better fights. You kind of had a lot of space to work with. That ramp you can see to my right, we would sort of loop around and use that ramp and use high ground and low ground to make space and get away. Some of the zombies are quite a bit bigger, so you have to like shoot the ice armor off of them and weaken them. So there's certain things like that I think end up playing out rather well, and it adds to the fun, I think, especially if I was playing this with other people. You kind of post up and choose your positions and make sure, you know, you're ready to go. And then here's sort of the big ramp up here. You can tell at the end this is going to be a pretty big boss fight. Now, sadly, this is one of those games where if you don't make it out, you don't get any of your stuff, because what you're doing is you're looking for these little floppy drive cards, these little floppy disks, floppy disks. And when you get the floppy disks, those are other weapons and other things that you can use the next time you go out. Sadly, I found a handful, and in one of the safe rooms, I loaded them up, and it even tells you don't get them if you don't survive. Here you can see the reload animation just not doing what it's supposed to. That happens a lot throughout this fight. Now, some of that could have been me because it's at the end, and maybe I'm rushing. Maybe I'm, not being as precise as I should. But there were numerous times where I just kind of stopped and just took my time and did it, and it still just didn't want to work. You're noticing here, a really good tip for reloading I found as well is reload with one bullet in the chamber. It makes it a little bit easier because then you don't have to add to it the pulling of the back there. You saw it took me like 3 times there to get the reload to work. And so this all sort of escalates, and a really, really big guy shows up. I'll skip ahead so you can see him. There he is. And you'll notice my 3 teammates are down. Sadly, they're all frozen in place, and I couldn't figure out how to get them back up. I assumed if I even tried, he was going to get me. He stays pretty much on top of you the whole time. But the little ammo box is replenished, so you're able to keep your ammo up. And I thought this was a pretty good fight, pretty good environment. You can kind of get him to bump into stuff, and we shot almost all of his ice armor off at this point in time. And I don't know if the gas barrel is replenished, but there was a barrel I could have used there. You can stun him. You can kind of, stun lock him a little bit if you get good headshots on him. But overall, and my health is actually quite low here, you can see the health dial is on my right hand. It's all the way down. You can't even see the green bars anymore. It's just like a faint yellow bar. So I'm on death's doorstep here. Overall, I would give this a recommendation if you can find people to play with. That would be my one big caveat. I don't know if I would recommend this if you're going to have to play by yourself, because it does get intense, and it is a bummer to have an entire run. That was 40 minutes. It was a 40-minute run. So to go all the way to the end of the run at 40 minutes, have the AI teammates fall to pieces and not succeed, that was a bit of a bummer. Now, obviously, the better you get, the more upgrades you get. Maybe that won't happen as often, but I had this, I believe, on the lowest difficulty setting just because I wanted to kind of get through it and see what it was like. And the AI still really struggled. So if you got a couple of buddies that can get this, you can play together. Now, I don't know if it supports crossplay. I'm assuming that it does because this game is on multiple places. Again, the PICO 4 is an all-in-one device, so I downloaded everything right over Wi-Fi and played right through the device. I didn't have to hook it up to anything. That is one big advantage to the PICO 4 that I do like. When looking for a VR unit, some people don't like the idea of needing a console or needing a PC, and that requirement is not something that you have to worry about with the PICO 4. So that's my review of After the Fall. I give it probably somewhere between a 7 and an 8. I do think there's room for polish and some fixes and to spruce things up a bit, especially that reload thing. Also, maybe some of the difficulty swings could have been a little less extreme because I did have it on the lowest setting. And if you're wanting to get this game, I strongly encourage you to reach out to some of your buddies and your friends to see if they want to get it first, because I do think that is where a game like this shines. I think it shines with the 4-player co-op. So I have a couple more reviews coming for the PICO, and then I'll give one final review of it as well, so keep your eyes open for that. Maybe you found this video after those videos went live, so make sure and check those out. I also do a live talk show every day about variety gaming news, so make sure you hit subscribe and that bell button, and I'll see you in the next video.